We like to describe our report as a carefully edited collection of U.S. news headlines, papers across the country, summarized for you in one place. We do it here every day. Here's our top story. America is buzzing about baseball with the season about to begin. USA Today publishes its annual baseball preview section. Writer Jorge Ortiz notes that small market teams with smaller payrolls have had some success in recent years, making it tougher for teams like the New York Yankees to buy their way to a World Series. The Yankees are one of the teams mentioned on the front page of this newspaper as USA Today introduces the country to two new baseball stadiums. The New York teams play their first exhibition games in their parks today. The new stadium for the Mets, the new stadium for the Yankees. The story says Camden Yards triggered this trend of throwback baseball stadiums 17 years ago. But these two parks are the next generation. The New York Post, writing about that this morning, says the fans are already loving it, calling the new Yankee Stadium a home run. There's no new stadium in Kansas City, but there is plenty of anticipation for new food. Say goodbye to peanuts and Cracker Jack. The Kansas City Star says the Royals are launching a fancy menu that includes the Tomahawk. That's the stadium's 24-ounce buffalo ribeye. Yesterday's breakthrough G20 summit in London was marked as a success by most newspapers across the country and many of those around the world. The Washington Post business columnist Steve Pearlstein calls the agreement to tighten banking regulation and inject $1.1 trillion into the world economy a rare triumph of substance. Reviews of the summit were strong overseas. One example is this one from France, a headline that translates to the incredible success. News analysis in the New York Times on this looks at this as President Obama's first major event on the international stage. The Times says the president has presented himself as the leader of an America that can no longer go it alone. New York Post coverage on this and on the royal visit with the Queen and the Obamas. The story says Americans missed the real story on Wednesday by focusing on Michelle Obama's potential gaffe by hugging the Queen. The real news, the story says, was the fact that the Queen returned Obama's squeeze. The Washington Post on this, with its read coming from the British papers, the Times of London wrote, protocol seems to be dispensed with when the Obamas come to town. One more item on this G20 thing. Kind of a sad series of man-on-the-street interviews from the New York Daily News. A lot of people haven't a clue what the G20 is. One woman interviewed here thought it was the new version of Gatorade. For the record, that's G2. While we're on the New York Daily News, the paper was expecting a ruling on the Madonna adoption case in Africa. That decision came in after this paper and the others had gone to press. The judge turned Madonna down, saying she'd have to meet residency requirements in Malawi in order to adopt a child there. The saga of former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich continued yesterday when federal prosecutors indicted Blagojevich, his brother, and 4 top aides. The Chicago Tribune says it could have been anticlimactic, but prosecutors added a few more chapters still by revealing more confidants who had turned on Blagojevich and pulling his family into the controversy. To the economy, Tribune business columnist Greg Burns says the country is in a he session as the unemployment rate for men continues to soar above that for women. Well, not quite recession-proof, but New Orleans seems to have its own economy these days. The LA Times says the city is a place full of hard hats and big building projects. Home prices have dipped only slightly in a unique post-Katrina economy. One shop clerk says, only half-jokingly, normally we're the worst at everything. Most local politicians have been busy trying to figure out how to spend the federal economic stimulus money, but in Lamar, Colorado, they are more ambitious. The Denver Post has details of a $50,000 town incentive program. Spend $300 in the town. City leaders will give you gift certificates to spend another $30. A new tax in Texas on strip clubs, 10% of every dollar they charge for an admission. This is actually a victory for the industry. According to the Houston Chronicle, it replaces an old tax that added a $5 fee for every patron. Great story from Miami about a concert for the iTunes generation. You wanted a little bit of time, you want to pay for what you use. These quickie concerts from the New World Symphony are only about 20 minutes long. That works out to 12 cents a minute, says the Miami Herald. Maryland Democrat Benjamin Cardin wants to save the nation's newspapers. On the Washington Post opinion page today, he says, let newspapers become nonprofits. He thinks that would be similar to public television stations. I've always had great success traveling with the Frommer's travel guides. Arthur Frommer published his first travel guide 50 years ago. Today he's talking to USA Today about his latest book. It promises secrets to travel better, cheaper, and smarter. His first book was inspired by his time in Paris. He says that remains his favorite city. Bingo is back. Or is it Bargo? The Minneapolis Star-Tribune writes about the growing popularity of bingo at local bars, part of a growing trend. But bars in the North Star State are not permitted to call it bingo, so instead they refer to it as bango or bargo. We invite you to come back every day to get all the top news from U.S. newspapers at patspapers.com. On our website, you'll find links to all the stories that I've featured today.